A very good Thursday evening. Cheesesteak lovers, we're off to Bensalem, Pennsylvania. Back leaving tomorrow as soon as the wife gets home. Looking forward to it, and we're glad you're here for tonight's Stats Race Lens webinar. We've got a good one. We've got a fabulous card at Parks, Philadelphia Park, Keystone. Call it whatever you want. We'll call Ellis Starr, though, who's with us tonight, a big winner, because if you were following along Saturday, Ellis, on a $57 and change ticket, gave you a blueprint to score out for over $4,000 in that Woodbine must-pay high five to close out the Woodbine Mile card. Ellis, congratulations.
Thank you, Steve. It was interesting, and we do want to spend a little time on it because talking about it in brief can hopefully help everybody listening figure out how to construct the ticket. And then, of course, you got to get lucky. They got to run, as you said before we went on the air. It was quite interesting. I personally play more horizontals. For those who don't know, I play more doubles and pick threes and pick fours. But, when they're giving away money, when you get to a mandatory payday, you really got to take a look because that's really very few positive expectations in racing. And you can go in pools, you can do all kinds of things. And, and in this case, as usual, they put up one of the toughest races around. And now when there's a 2 planning race for fillies and mares, the field of 12. And, I'll just briefly talk about a couple things. So, and it'll be also in our upcoming Behind the Lens October newsletter. I wrote a few paragraphs on this as well, and not about, me winning. I mean, that's all nice. We all like to win. And, as a side note, we should all take some of the money and have something to show for it. So just so you know, you always can look around the house. Dick Mitchell taught me this years ago. If anybody has a big score, don't just pay bills. Do something where you have something to say, that was paid for by a score, whatever it was. It reminds me of a very funny story. You'll all appreciate Dan and Steve having been in the industry and doing seminars and radio and everything else. I was doing a seminar at Pleasanton probably 20 years ago when I was working for Trackmaster, and I finished the seminar, and I was doing with Dick Stoffer, and a guy walked up to me and shook my hand, and he said, because of you, I put a roof on my house. I said, what do you mean? And he said, I did something, I can't remember what he said, I did something you said to do, and a horse you gave out as well, and I hit a pick 6, and they paid $10,000. I decided I was going to have something concrete to show for it. So every time I look up my roof, I remember the score. And I thought that was very cool. So it reinforced that lesson, by the way, of having something to show for it. But back to the race itself. So I'm going to show real quick the true odds screen for that race. Now, I had handicapped the race, and I thought the 5, the 2, and the 10 were the contenders. I looked at true odds, and I sorted it on the true odds. Just the true odds is close. But in most cases, I like the true odds screen. For those who don't know the difference, we talked about this. The true odds screen is the analytics that Stats came up with, their own tweak on everything using all their 40 years of sports experience. And it's adjusted for the morning line and then live odds because they determined there was some effect, not only on profitability, which we all know, but on probability. And the adjusted true odds takes into account the user tweaks and also some of the factors we have. But for whatever reason, I sorted it. I like the true odds. And I saw that the 4, Katrina's Way, was rated as high as the 5. This is based on odds for the probability. And then the 10, the 2 were right there. And then there was kind of a shakeout. And you can see some of the horses here had true odds at the bottom of 99 to 1, 46 to 1, 30 to 1, 20 to 1. So if anybody's making a ticket like this going forward, or you're trying to figure out who to put if you're playing a superfecta or even a trifecta, particularly a high 5, where you're trying to get the first 5 finishes in order, you want to get these lines, these gray lines of determination. You take your stand, you hope they run right. And so it was interesting for me. So I threw the 4 in, but I decided the best way to structure the ticket was to, for whatever reason, the 5 I remember was dropping and had not raced at this level before, coming out of allowance. So I thought I'd put the 5 on top, and then I decided to throw the 2, 4, 10 in for second, and I know I had to keep the cost of the ticket down because it can get ridiculous, even at 20 cents. So I used 2, 4, 10 in second and third. And then there were 3 horses. I looked at the bottom. I said, well, I don't know why I shouldn't have done it in retrospect, but I threw 3 horses out of the 4th position. I threw the 12 out, I think it was the 12, 9, and 8. The 12, the 3, and I can't remember if it was 8 or 9. I'll see in a second with my ticket. I left them out of 4th, and everybody in 5th. So it ended up being $57.60. And, for those that were looking, a few minutes before the race, I sent out the tweet. The race went off at 7:17. I sent the tweet out at 7:10. So you can see I left the 8 out, I left the 7 out, left the 12 out of the 4th position. And for those that watched the race, and you could, if you did, you know what happened. The 4-horse, Katrina, broke dead last. She hit the gate coming out of the gate. She had no shot. And so really, the 5 had to win, and the 2 and the 10 had to finish 2nd and 3rd like an exacta. And then everything had to go right. Couldn't have those other 3 horses come in 4th. So it was a lot of luck. But it ended up the 5 won by a head over the 2, a length in front of the 10, and then you could see 1, 3, and, it was a nice score. But really back to this, it does give you, it really gave me, and I think it can give anybody a way to at least help decide what horses go where. And that's what I did.
Well, and I wanted to make that point, let you elaborate on it, and the approach. I mean, obviously, everybody's going to go at it slightly different, and there's no perfect formula for it. But I do think that from a budgetary standpoint, having a solo player on top is probably the right approach. I mean, unless you're into a race where you absolutely can identify, only 2 horses that can only win, and then you maybe go 2 by 3 and you spread the pyramid out by there. But if you can tightrope with a solo on the top of the ticket, you've really increased your chances of success, and you absolutely maximized it on Saturday. So I wanted to give you a chance to celebrate it and help people utilize that kind of thinking on their own plays. Dan Tordjman joins us, of course, tonight as well, and Dan does a lot of ticket structuring and budgetary suggestions on America's Best Racing. Dan, good evening.
Good evening, Steve. That was pretty cool to see. I was actually, just like anyone else, I mean, like that scene in Let It Ride where, the guy says, do you think I was rich enough? I couldn't have used the extra money. I could have definitely used the extra money. So right after the race, I was like, man, I wish I would have seen that a few minutes ago. I don't know if I would have, I would still, I didn't handicap the race, but I might have taken a closer look and maybe, thrown together a ticket that looked similar to that. But no, thrilled for Ellis. Awesome ticket. And I hope that, you can't play every ticket that everyone posts on Twitter, but when you look at Ellis's tickets and when he takes, kind of a firm stance and he's keying a horse on top like that in an important race from a betting perspective, take notice. So the Uber capper strikes again. So pretty awesome. Congrats, Ellis.
Let's start
Thanks, in. Much appreciated.
Got a very exciting day of racing at Philadelphia, and there have been years historically where the Cotillion day or the Pennsylvania Derby day, because these two big races historically had not been on the same card. It's only in recent years that moving the Pennsylvania Derby to the mid to late September weekend has happened, and it absolutely resulted in this race moving up to Grade 1 status, where it'll be run for the first time as Grade 1 on Saturday. The rest of the card, though, is just exceptional, and that goes even beyond the Gallant Bob and the Alphabet Soup and the Connect, which is that Pennsylvania Derby champion race. It also includes several allowances and a really good third race, maiden special weight, with some serious 2-year-olds. So it is a start to finish outstanding card. The 2 allowances after the Derby as well are well worth watching and staying. If you ever go to Philadelphia on this day, you know that there's no point in leaving after the Derby because the traffic out the street road is impossible. So you might as well stay for the 12th and 13th. Let's dive in. We'll start with the Pennsylvania bred race, the Alphabet Soup, and the Big Handsome Gray. And Ellis, kick it off.
Well, I wanted to go over these because some people are going to play the pick threes. Then you got the all stakes pick, not all stakes. You got the pick four with 9 through 12, which has one of those great races after the Pennsylvania Derby. So we'll start with this race here, and we're going to take turns. There's a couple races that I did by myself, and a couple that Dan and I will go back and forth on, trying to show all kinds of things for everybody, and get different angles and things to look at here. So in this race, we're going to go to the PPs right away. And this is a state bred race. We know right away, Alphabet Soup, 4 registered Pennsylvania breds. So, two things I look for in state bred races, and I'm sure both of you do the same. It's either horses proven in state bred stakes races or horses that are dropping out of open stakes. And there were none of the former, the latter, in this race. But there are a couple of the former. And the first one here is First Hand Report, who just did run in a state bred stakes, the Marshall Jenny. But that race was meant for the dirt turf, but taken off. So that is a complete line out. And we're going to have a feature, by the way, at some point in the next few months, where you can not only filter races, but you can line them out. Just so kind of tweaking everybody to let you know I can, same as I do when I get a printed program and draw a line through it. But before that, the state bred Power by Far, which was a sprint, 1 by 3, and then the 2-turn state bred Liffard Stakes, 1 by a neck. So you've got a horse here that, if you toss the last, which you should, 2 state bred stakes. I don't know about the morning line of 6-1 because you got Pletcher and Castellano, so I wouldn't count on that. I probably think more about the 5-2 than before. But the jockey changed to Castellano, also significant here because the only time Javier rode the horse, First Hand Report, he won. So that's 2 pluses. And the best thing of all is he doesn't need the lead. He may have gone wire to wire here, but he came from second here. He came from second here. So if he ends up sitting second, it's saving ground. He'll be in good shape. The other one, main one to look at here is the 5, Edge of Reality, just outside. He's a state bred stakes winner here. Look for the S. He lost by a neck here in the Robolino. Lost by a head here in the Lemat. This was on the dirt. This was on the all-weather, the A, at Presque Isle. But he actually has a win. Won this race, believe it or not, because I have lifetime PP set up here, and I was looking. I actually at one time had a filter for just Parks, but there's one win here at Parks, and you have to really go down to find it. Believe it or not, it was in this race in 2014, the Alphabet Soup. So here it is, 20 September 14th on the turf. 113 Equibase speed figure, which is phenomenal. And he won by 3/4. And so he's got a win on the turf in a state bred stakes. His recent state bred stakes form is really good with these 2 runner-up finishes. And he's got a closing style in a race in which the race projection tells me that it may be a little hotly contested. It doesn't look like it here at the first call, but when you look here and sort on the running style, you see 6 horses with an early running style. And that's why I'm hoping that First Hand Report will take back because of that. But with any of those 6, and there's also a knowledge here, projected to slow down in the middle, but lots of early zip, though. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be fairly hotly contested early, and that's going to help out the 5 Edge of Reality. 2 more to look at real quick for the exotics, and then we'll move on. 11, Chateau de Zille, and correct me if I get this wrong, Steve. Must maybe the northern horses. Where is this? It's not changing. Hold on one second here. There we go. Chateau de Zille. First or second, this is an off-turf race, so these last 4 turf races, second. And you know what? I'm going to show, actually, what I did here. This makes it easier when you're looking at turf races. I was looking for everything, but to make it easier, we have, of course, for those that aren't that familiar with the program with Race Lens, we have the pre-populated past performance templates under situational, and one of them is a turf sprint or route. So if today's race is a turf route, you're going to see all the turf routes that are going to be bold. Everything else is gray. So the perfect example here is if you go back and look at Chateau de Vizille. I can get this to work. Sorry, my laptop is acting up a little here. You can see second, first, last 4 turf routes. Now, none were stakes, but the horse definitely likes turf routes. These little class come up. The other interesting long shot is the 2 Uncle Dave, who in his career has been pretty good. 5 wins, 6 seconds, 7 thirds, 10 for 11 in the money at Parks. And Uncle Dave won this race in 2015, and now I have the turf races out here. So here's the Alphabet Soup in 2015, and he won by a head of 2-1. And what's odd for me, and which is the reason I'm going to definitely use him, is Uncle Dave is 15-1 the morning line here, in spite of the fact that he ran second last time out on the Parks Grass and allowance optional claimers. So those are the horses I like in the Alphabet Soup: the 4 First-Hand Report, the 5 Edge of Reality, the 11 Chateau de Vizille, and the 2 Uncle Dave. We're putting up all our picks as we do every week, every seminar, in the Race Lens forum, which is accessible here in the upper right-hand corner from the little icon that looks like comic book speech sign. That'll take you to the forum, and there's lots of good stuff there.
Nice. The only horse I would mention in here is that Michael Mack is tacit a little bit. I first time gelding, nothing clever.
Yeah, I would use it. I have a little note. I don't want to go further, but Tacit and Burn, James Byrne, the 6 and 9, I might consider for second and third on trifectas and exactas, not in the win position. And somebody asked a question, which is absolutely correct, when we were looking at Edge of Reality, that Jose Ortiz is named to ride. Of course, he will be off his mount. He's going to be out for a while. Is that correct, Steve?
Yeah, he's going to take off the weekend. He avoided serious injury yesterday in that nightcap, that horse at Clements that went wrong, and is very lucky that he's not more seriously hurt. So he's going to take off through the weekend, and he'll get back on horses at Belmont next week. But that had to throws a kind of a wrench in the works of a lot of trainers this weekend. As it happens, he did not have a Derby mount, but he obviously was on lockdown for Bill Mott in the Oaks, in the Cotillion. So there's some machinations that have to go on. People need new mounts.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't know. Well, John Velasquez, I know, is named later, so maybe Johnny could pick up that mount. I wouldn't be upset about that one bit.
There you go. Yeah. Speaking of which, Johnny's ride, we should mention, Johnny's work on world approval Saturday from the rail was really a thing of beauty. And if you're going to be stuck on the inside, Velasquez is the right guy, because he's going to get the horse in position early, even if it's not a horse that necessarily needs to be, up in the vanguard. You're guaranteed to at least not have to worry about getting shuffled back early. I thought that was a spectacular performance by Johnny on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. You get a world-class jockey and a good horse, and you can make it happen. They always say when a bad jockey can't move up a new horse, bad jockey can't move up. A good jockey can't move up a bad horse, sorry. But a good jockey can certainly make sure that a good horse has everything nothing in his way in terms of that. And it was a well-deserved victory for a horse that's really come into his own recently.
We've got some nice horses to talk about, Ellis, in the Connect, and let's take a look here. The Pennsylvania Derby Champion Stakes last year, of course, that was Connect, and you got some hard-hitting veterans here that make for an interesting race, including the Pennsylvania-bred Paige McKenney, Mary Epler's wonderful, venerable gelding.
Yeah, I think if you look up the word heart in the dictionary, you got to see a picture of Paige McKinney. There's no question about it. I'm going to start with the price here with the 5 Ike Walker. Now, probably, assuming Ike Walker, trained by Terry Hollendorfer, is a stablemate, or was on the what I want to say on the van mate for Itchy as well, who runs in the Cotillion. But maybe not as well. I mean, I think probably yes. You know, they always try and ship in twos. But this is a really interesting horse with over $300,000 in earnings that never really won a stakes race. And Jerry, as he often does, tries to spot something. Claimed this horse $50,000 in January. 2 later, back to a really nice figure, some of his best figures back here, 111, and then back to a 108 figure. And then a couple of mediocre races, but then this last one was a really nice effort after a 2-month layoff to win by 3 in a good effort. He fits here based on the earnings because this is, you know, a non-graded stakes. And, you know, what's really interesting here is I have a couple angle matches. One of them, I think, is one that's included in race plans. And this was the original one, which is 3 5-furlong 3 5-furlong workouts, one of which is a bullet into a dirt route. Now, when you look at this, when you click on it, it takes you to the angle, because we're going to talk about angles. And this workout, this angle when it comes up is okay. It's a lot of races, 20% wins, 50% in the money exactly, a -13 ROI. So right about beat to take out a couple points on win percentage. But then I decided to just, and this is what you can do with angles and should be, if you see a global angle you like, or if you're doing research like individual research, try and turn it into an angle. Then you can get notified if it comes up. So I turned this into an angle for Jerry Hollendorfer only, and all I did was change one thing, and I'll show everybody how to do it. So we had this angle, 3 5-furlong bullets into a dirt route, and I changed one thing. I added include trainer list, profile, trainer, include trainer, Hollendorfer, and I added it. Now, it only came up 8 times in the last year, but 2 wins, 1 second, and 1 third, 4 for 8 with Hollendorfer. So I thought it was a little significant here as a way just to show what kind of condition Ike Walker may be in out of this. And to verify that, I was looking at the horse's workouts to see if he's holding his form, and his workout, I just passed it, sorry. His workout here on September 10th was the best of 80 at Santa Anita for 5 furlongs in a minute, not from the gate. So I thought that was significant. So that's what I'm going to first. He does get some pace to run into. He likes to come from off the pace. We've got, of course, the next horse I'm going to talk about is something you can't leave out. Not a good win bet, but it's Matt King Cole. I think the 3-1 line is not going to hold up. We know when he gets the lead how tough he can be, winning the Johnson, losing by a neck in the Charlestown Classic, coming from off the pace, winning the Mountain View, and then overmatched probably here in the Suburban and maybe in the West Virginia Governor's Cup. However, there's something I want to start pointing out, or pointed out a few times today. Someone already asked the question, what is the blue in the race numbers? And we'll talk about it a few times here. So this is a brand new feature that users can turn on, and I'll hover over it, then I'll show you how to set it up. This is called Key Race. And again, I'm going to pretend I don't know the level of all listeners here, but a key race is a race in which, from the past, 2 or more horses have come back to win, and it's kind of predictive of what can happen in the future. And Steve, you can jump in any time if you want to add something to this while I'm going to now show people how to set this up and how it's there.
I'm interested too. I saw the highlight and haven't seen it in action yet.
So it's on every past performance template. For those who just noticed, I click on Customize PPs, and the template I'm using is this Equibase Lifetime PPs template. So you go to Edit. This is where it is. And we also wrote about it in this forum I was talking about, which is accessible by clicking on that icon up there. And there's 3 different sections. This is the one that controls the highlights and the underlines and the circles and the fills and all that. This is create conditional formats, and there's all these categories. The key race category can be found under form. And this is new. Now, it is set automatically on with a minimum of 3. Okay, but I want to start at 2 because I want to find these races as soon as they come out. And you can go in here and you click on the format, and you have all these choices. You could do a strike through, which I personally say for something that's bad. Text color, which is okay, but I wanted to really see this. fill color, circle, which is circling it like this is here, and underline. I wanted to fill. I wanted the biggest, brightest notification of a key race that I could get, and I chose blue because I use green for some other stuff, and red means bad in my mind, but you have some other colors you can choose. So basically, I selected blue under fill. I hit done. In this case, I'll hit reset, still there, and I set it to 2, and then I hit save. And now in every past performance I look at, no matter what template I have, particularly on my template, it's going to come up. So we're going to go back to this horse here, and this was what are we on here? Sorry, Matt King Cole, this last race. So now I don't see any italics here, but the great thing is now I know this is a key race, and when I click on the chart link, which is the date, it takes me to the chart, and I will now see immediately, based on the circles, that the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th horses all won their next starts. And if you hover over, it'll tell you whether it was at a higher or lower class rating, which I don't use it that much, but it could be significant. If you want to see what they won, you could see here, Paige McKinney, for example, earned a 99 figure. If he wasn't in this race, I'd want to see what that was. And you go to his lifetime PPs, and you can see here was the race that he ran 4th in, and he won the next. He went from a 99 to a 101 when he won the Roanoke. So, again, I'll probably say it later for some of the people that are coming and going out of the webinar, but this is a great feature. And I got to tell you, and I'm sure, Steve, you would agree, and Dan, if someone doesn't take advantage of this feature, you're missing out, because this will get you ahead of the rest of the crowd, because most people have to go looking at charts and add 1, 2, 3, and make. Now this is telling me this is a key race. And when I see a key race like this where none of the top 3 are italics, I know that I know something that most people don't know.
No, I can't agree more. I mean, it may only take, in some cases, one of these a month, and that's the beauty of this. I mean, the more of these angles that either the developers come up with on their own, or that you suggest as users, and of course we should point out the forum to people, and they should be following Stats Racelands on Twitter as well. You can ask questions in the forum. You can ask questions. You can ask Ellis directly, Dan, myself, and we'll get you answers if we don't know. But this is why, right from the get-go, it was obvious that this was going to be the most valuable, stable mail service you could imagine, because everything that you like as a player can be structured and then delivered. And the fact that it's going to peruse every past performance of every racetrack in North America, that's something none of us can do on our own. So you've got an invaluable tool that pays for itself over and over again.
Yeah, it's great. So we'll finish off real quick on this race. Matt King Cole, he runs back to this race. He's certainly going to be very tough here. We know that. The 9, Just Call Kenny, career best effort last time out. I definitely like his chances here. He's never won back-to-back, but he's going to get a great trip off the pace. Matt King Cole has a tendency sometimes to go a little too fast, but if he gets his own way on the lead, he's going to be fine. And Donegal Moon, the 2, also coming off this nose defeat and second here. And then Paige McKinney, I know I'm going deep here, as I said, but you can't leave Paige McKinney off a ticket. 5 for 6 at Parks, 5 wins in a second, including the Roanoke last month. Has won open stakes, even though it looks like he just stayed bred. He won here the Native Dancer. He won the Sotara before it back here, and he could do that. So in this race, 5 Ike Walker, 4 Matt King Cole, the 9 Just Call Kenny, the 2 Donegal Moon, and the 8 Paige McKinney.
Very nice. Let's get Dan to pick up the ball and run with it. Dan, the Gallant Bob, it's been a pretty good bellwether sprint race the last several years.
Yeah, and this is a solid field here, I think. I kind of had my eye on a couple of horses who are coming out of what I think were maybe tougher spots, specifically the Jerkins, and I'll get to one of those horses in a minute. But I'll start off with the 6-horse, Sonic Mule. A little bit of a pace plane here. This is maybe a feature that could be added at some point. Horses who were eased last out. I mean, it's a feature that it's an angle that, for whatever reason, when I overlook a horse that was eased last out, or generally horses seem to come back and run well after they're eased, in my experience, unless of course they've missed a significant amount of time. And so I think so. I'll get to a couple of things there in a minute, but basically, as I said, a little bit of a pace play in here. If you go back to some of his earlier races, you can see that he's got some speed. You've got Kendrick Carmouche riding, who, if you've watched him at all, especially recently, just gunning everything he's on right to the lead. He is cutting back here, but I think that this projects to be probably his best distance, going a mile and the 16th last out, as you see, as Ellis is hovering over it. The mile and the 16th the race before, but he did, I think, some of his best running sprinting, and so I think he should be close to what projects to be, I think, a fairly soft pace. And if you look at here we go, pulling up Todd Pletcher here for a stats research search here. In the past 5 years, off of similar layoff, 61 to 180 days, going route to sprint in graded stakes races. We'll see what this generates here in a minute, but you probably suspect that the numbers are pretty good, and they are. So we'll look for almost there. There we go. All graded stakes.
I'm missing one criteria. I was trying to do it from scratch to show people how you do it. Oh, the 61 to 80, 61 to 180 days. There we go.
And then also
now we got it.
For distance.
Yeah, got that. That was already okay. Oh, route to sprint. I'm sorry. I have to go back.
That's fine. So
it's quick, but let me change that to route to sprint.
Yeah, and those numbers are good, and they're probably pretty similar to what you're going to pull up here in a minute. The numbers will be solid. You're going to see that horses are in the money more than half the time, a couple of wins. And what you'll also notice is that the prices on some of these, you'll see on the sort of closer to the right-hand side there, a lot of these horses are obviously shorter prices. With Sonic.
Mine's different than what you had. I must have done something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, the search that I did earlier, specifically past 5 years, 61 to 180, routes to sprints, graded stakes. Oh, I think dirt is the only criteria. So I added all races, but you probably have a more accurate.
Got it.
No,
it's a better end size. I don't think it matters when you're talking to a guy like Fletcher. I mean, I certainly agree.
Right.
There was no reason to do dirt then. It was basically, you want to measure a trainer's acumen. If you know a guy's really bad on one surface, fine. So yeah, this is it's more significant this way.
Yeah. So as I said, you got your in the money rate there, 55%, very solid. It's got a couple of wins, and as I mentioned, you look at the odds of some of these horses. You're not generally going to get the kind of price that you're going to get on Sonic Mule here. And so I'm interested in this horse, and as I said, I think there's a strong pace angle here because I do not think there's much pace in the race. If you look at the true odds here, there are only a couple of horses with the E next to their name, and one of them is Sonic Mule. You've also got Aquamarine, who's got a bit of early pace, and also incidentally was eased last out. So those are two that I would keep an eye on at prices. Again, maybe a bit of a hunch play, but again, we could back it up with some of that research that we did with Pletcher. I think the horse is interesting, at least on paper. Your two favorites here are Petrov and Coldfront, and so if you can get past those, I think you can make a case for just about any of these. And one of the other ones that I wanted to look at was the 2-horse Ann Arbor Eddie, coming out of a really tough race, what I think is a tough race in that Practical Joke, Takaful, American Anthem. You see them right there. But I wouldn't be entirely discouraged by that 8th place finish. They experimented with blinkers. Clearly, it didn't work, but he didn't break cleanly either. It was kind of a bit of a bumpy trip, and I give him a second look here and a second shot in this field. Going back to the stats research on Doug O'Neill, we'll look at the how he does switching to blinkers off in graded stakes. So again, bear with us. This will just take a moment. But basically want to get a sense for how Doug's horses run when he takes the blinkers back off. And with Stats Race Lens, you could do the search, you could specify the search to include only graded stakes races. You could also do all stakes races, or you could do all races. For the purposes of this search, I did only graded stakes races, and you'll see the numbers here in a moment. So there you go, 6 starts and 2 wins, and those 2 wins are fairly recent, and you might remember they're both also extremely nice prices. You got Frank Conversation winning the Hollywood Derby last year at 36-1, and IRAP winning the Bluegrass Stakes at 31-1. And the one thing that I found the more that I use stats is that I think initially the way I looked at it was, I would love to see a large sample. I'd love to see a lot of, if I'm doing a search, it'd be great if I saw, hey, this trainer has run, at least 50 to 75 horses over the past couple of years this way, and they've won at a high rate. But I think where you make your money and where you could potentially find something that's more valuable is when you have a smaller sample and you find a trainer perhaps doing something that he doesn't often do. And so, again, this is nothing that's, he's not reinventing the wheel here by taking the blinkers off of a horse who didn't do well with blinkers on. But I think you can find angles along the way, and you could find different things as you keep playing with and you keep modifying all those various criteria that that Ellis has been clicking around. And here's, more switching to off. You've got a couple of other horses there whose names you might, remember.
Yeah, I just changed it from, no, I got it on graded. I switched it to graded stakes, all graded stakes.
Yeah.
Before.
So.
And you get more horses here, and you get a couple of horses, Golden Sense, Richard's Kid. Yeah, it's an interesting move. I didn't know. Trainers sometimes have a sixth sense about this kind of stuff, and O'Neill appears to, particularly in a situation like this. So I can see that.
Yep. So we'll do we'll drive Ellis nuts one more time with some more stats research on Petrov and trainer on Moquette. We're going to put in another search here, and what we'll base this on is the fact that Petrov has the top Equibase speed figure last out. And so you can do a search here on stats that actually shows you how a trainer's horse might run back when posting the top Equibase speed figure last out. And also in this situation, I did in-graded stakes in the past 5 years. So again, you could kind of narrow it down a little bit. And what I was trying to get at here was, okay, so you have a horse that runs really well, runs its top speed figure last out, and, how does that horse come back? Does the horse bounce? Do his horse, does he keep them fit? And if he's moving them into a stakes race, is that a sign that, he's extremely confident this horse is ready to go and is maintaining its form? And so I think that's what a search like this might provide in terms of insight. And so we'll see the numbers here when they come up. And these numbers specifically for graded stakes, top Equibase speed figures, not bad at all. 9 for 18, 50% in the money, and 3 wins. If you wanted to, you could go back out and do another search looking at, let's see, so I did one search here, top Equibase speed figure last out, and I didn't specify graded stakes, and the numbers were 3 for 60. So I guess what that tells you is that in those graded stakes, those horses are, they're there for good reason, and Ron's placing them right. So that's just a couple of insights there. And again, Petrov, I think, is probably your horse to beat. And I think, Ellis, you could probably add more on Cold Front and a couple of other runners that you had your eyes on.
Yeah, I'll do just that. So I, just like in the last race, I'm starting with the price, and I didn't do this on purpose. I started looking at a horse, but this running mate should not be 15-1. And here you got a horse that basically win, second disqualified at third in the Sugar Bowl at the end of last year. Okay, they tried 2 turns, that was out. I'm not even going to consider that race. And then came back in July, second and first. I mean, this is a Larry Jones horse. Good. 2 turns doesn't count. 95, 102, 115. A beautiful pattern of improving speed figures on a horse that's a 3-year-old with great breeding, created cross out of the Street Cry mare. That 115 Equibase figure. Now we're going to go back and look at Petrov here. Petrov's best figure, last race figure is 109. That's his career best as well. American Pastime. We're going to go, his is 108. Excitations, who's another one that's going to take a lot of money, 108. So you've basically got, on the Equibase scale here, the fastest horse in the race at 15-1 from a trainer that we know knows what he's doing, with the same jock that rode the horse the last 2 times, fast improving a horse. Now, what's interesting about Larry Jones, and I wanted to see this, is I was curious because he's going from allowance to grade 3. So I did a search on, of course, the first search that comes up is going to be the default, past 2 year dirt sprints, which is fine. And now I'm going to see what happens with Larry Jones when he has a horse that won its last start, which is here under winners. So you change it to winner last out. So now it's horse won its last start in dirt sprints. And now I'm going to also do it when today's race is a stakes. And I'm going to do all stakes. Down at the bottom here, we have all stakes. So this is exactly the situation. I'm duplicating Larry Jones' record in the last 2 years under this exact situation. Horse won its last race in a stakes that's a dirt sprint. He's 6 for 12, and gentlemen and ladies, and 50% of the money with a 14% flat bet ROI, and just a lot of runners. Only 4 horses off the board. And so I get more excited about Running Mate here because he's the best last speed figure in the race. Jones has history of doing this with these kinds of horses. And best of all, if you want to worry about whether the horse is holding his form, you've got a 46 and 6/10 and a 59 right before and right after the race. So he's in form. He's my top pick, Running Mate. American Pastime, another lightly raced improving horse shipping out here for Bob Hess. Done nothing wrong in his career. Win, 4th win. Moving from 3-year-olds and up to 3-year-olds only. And I remember this horse since I do picks for Southern California Distinctive B, but I didn't remember a lot. So if you ever want to say, well, who's this horse beating? Because it is an allowance race, today's a stakes. You can easily go to the chart for the race in which the horse you want to check and click on the horse's name. And in this case, you can see this horse, 5 wins in 5 seconds on dirt, $172,000 earned. And you can see consistent first and second finishes all with 103 to 109 figures. So here is a 6-year-old that this 3-year-old just beat, who runs really well. So that's very good on this. And the other thing I noted was I noticed Kent DeSormo's name. Kent DeSormo is not named on any other horse in the stakes races, in at least the stakes sequence 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He's not named any other horse. This is the stakes horse he's out to ride here. So he's going to be riding good. So my picks in the race are going to be the 4 Running Mate, the 5 American Pastime, and the 1. I will use the 2 Ann Arbor Eddie in 2nd and 3rd for exactas, and I will use the 7 Excitations in 2nd and 3rd, coming off a 2nd to Cold Front. If you ran 2nd to Cold Front, and Cold Front's going to be the heavy favorite, I've got to use him as well. So those are my plays in the Gallant Bob. Steve, you have a chance to take a look at this?
I have not really had a great feel for this. I respect Running Mate because I like at Philadelphia in this race. I think you got to be up front. Cold Front was so dreadful in the King's Bishop that I'm really kind of troubled. But he's going to be on the lead here, and he is the speed of the speed, and that can work. I was very impressed with Excitation going back to the Amsterdam, and Al Stahl picking his spots carefully with this horse, and the Fairgrounds Racing Club runner, he's going to have to, close into what looks like a moderate pace, but I don't have any clever ideas here.
Speaking of what you just said, and thank you for reminding me of the point I forgot, because it does look like Cold Front's going to be in front, but you know who True Odds has in front? American Pastime at both calls. So
interesting.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting because even though Cold Front is outside of American Pastime, if Kent DeSormo decides to send American Pastime, it kind of puts Cold Front in a bad position, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, based on the fact that he offered no resistance when he couldn't get the lead in the Jerkins, and of course this is sixth. I think it's not a positive. It's not a positive sign. I certainly am going to respect him because on his best he's obviously a player, but I always am respectful of California speed. All you have to do is look at what's happened virtually every time these West Coast runners have come to the East Coast this year, going all the way back through the entire season. They've had their way repeatedly. So here's American Pastime coming in. Hess and DeSormo, who do a lot of work together, and they have for years. I respect it. If it looks like he's going to be part of the pace, he's very dangerous. Turn to the Cotillion, and Dan, you're listed first in our notes. So pick up the ball and talk about this outstanding group of fillies, a lot of which we've seen all throughout the Oaks season. And we do have some horses that are either stretching out and some that are going to be going back to two turns. It's an interesting scenario. Abel Tasman, of course, the leader in the clubhouse coming east, and Baffert is on hand with Jimmy Barnes laid up with that broken pelvis. Baffert has manned the shed row, the rake and the pitchfork.
Well, yeah, and speaking of Baffert, I know that Ellis has a fun angle to share, a pretty kind of mind-blowing angle in a few minutes that he'll share when he talks about Abel Tasman. But I do want to talk about Actress a little bit, who's going to be my pick. This is one of these horses that I've been high on her for a little while, and she's disappointed, at least in her last few. She's hung, and I mean she's hung because I don't think she's wanted to go as far as she's gone. Now, specifically in the last race, going 1.25 miles, she made a really nice move in that race, but just did not have enough late. And the pace was fast enough for her to close into. But the one race that I kind of look at, and I looked at again, and gave me confidence that she is perhaps, she has what it takes to get it done at this mile and the 16th distance, is that Delaware Oaks 2 races back. As you can see there to the right, there's the red arrow pointing up, that trouble indicator. And that trouble indicator, if you watch the race, basically is referencing her brushing with a horse in deep stretch. But if you look at the move she made, I mean, very impressive, not much close from the back. She ended up finishing ahead behind Proud and Fearless, who was loose on a pretty slow pace. I think the pace here will probably be prompted by the Pletchers, Proud and Fearless. It's as well. And, Abel Tasman from post 11, I would think it would need to make some sort of move relatively early to get in position. So I think there should be enough pace. And I think what I take from all that and looking at those last few races is that, I think 1 mile and a 16th from 1.25 miles, it is a good move for her. I think she'll, I think her one, that turn of foot that she has, that one move that she makes is best suited to a race of this distance and one that has some pace. And so I think she's going to get the pace. I think the distance is right, and for that reason, I do like Actress. One other horse to look at is Lockdown. You mentioned some of the horses that we've seen throughout the year. We've seen her in the Kentucky Oaks. We saw her in the Mother Goose. And then in the Alabama last out. Again, 1.25 miles, maybe asking just a little too much from this one. She didn't really have any excuses in the race, but her Mother Goose effort 2 races back at 1.16 miles was strong. You'll see that there are trouble indicators in 2 of her last 3 races. The Kentucky Oaks line reads a nightmarish go. I took another look at her trip there. It wasn't ideal, but I think nightmarish was perhaps an exaggeration. She did have to weave in and out of traffic a bit, but there's no question that in that race, Abel Tasman had a more direct path to the wire, and she's only beaten. Lockdown's only beaten by 2 1/4 lengths there. She's been working well. I think Lockdown is primed for an improved effort, certainly an improvement off of her Alabama. So I do like her. I think the price will be nice on her as well. And so those would be Actress and Lockdown would be the 2 horses that I would, if I'm going to give any 2 a shot at beating Abel Tasman, that would be them. I know Ellis has a pretty compelling case to make for It's His Well.
Yes, I do. And, it's funny, you Dan, you like Proud and Fearless, but It Says Well beat her. And then she went back, she went up to Saratoga, and she ran better than anybody in that 10 furlong race, except for the winner late, who's not here. Of course, Abel Tasman beat you late before that in the CCA Oaks. But this is what I call a race within a race. A winner runs off by 5, they got no shot. But It's As Well has a really good mind, and she held Salty safe, who was coming on pretty well. She beat, in this race, we'll go back and look at the chart, It's As Well. You could see she beat Salty, she beat Actress, she beat Lockdown, and she beat Mopatism. So, she's beaten 4 of these. And if you look back before that, when she won the Delaware Oaks, the race Dan was talking about, she beat Actress again. She beat Proud and Fearless. So she's basically beaten 5 of these already. She went back to Hollendorfer's barn in Southern California. Comes back, she gets Drayden Van Dyke. I didn't look at Van Dyke like I looked at the Soma, but I think this is his only man of the day, probably. That 107 Equibase speed figure, we're going to compare it to Abel Tasman in a minute, and you're going to see something really interesting. So It's As Well as my top pick. Definitely a lot of value at 4 to 1. Now, when you go to Abel Tasman, who I'm not knocking except for the win bet, you see this 112, and at Belmont, that's a 1-turn mile. Her 2-turn races, besides the earlier when she was in April, when she got beat by Paradise Woods, when she won the Kentucky Oaks, of course, that was a slop. She got a 104 figure, and that's adjusted for the condition of the track. And then a 105 in the Coaching Club American Oaks, which, of course, she won by a head, and really that was the race in which Mike Smith had his whip in Elate's face. Legally, but he did. And, she barely won. So you got a horse that basically she could run a 104 and a 105 in winning 2-turn races compared back to It's As Well, whose representative race, not the 1.25 miles, 1/16 of 107. So on the square, It's As Well could beat Abel Tasman here, in my opinion, anyway. But Abel Tasman, certainly for 3 races since adding the blinkers, have been very, very good here. The 3 wins, starting with the Oaks. And here's the stat Dan was talking about. So this is an angle I have that anybody could set up. They look identical. They're a little different, but not really. So Bob Baffert, you're going to be amazed here when you think about this. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, Steve, on a webinar, but when Baffert has a horse, this is Baffert only, when he has a horse whose last race was a winner, and this race is a graded stakes, so it could be allowance into a graded stakes, it could be a non-graded stakes into a graded stakes, it could be a graded stakes. But when Baffert's horse won his last race, and today's race is a graded stakes, they win in the last year 45% of the time and 75% in the money, with, believe it or not, a 4% ROI, which is 20% better than the average win takeout of 16%. So, either of you two want to just say how amazing you think that is?
Nothing involving Baffert amazes me. It's just
I mean, 50,
not at all. But I
wins. Yeah, it's crazy. Anyway, so that's why I'm not leaving Abel Tasman out, by the way. And then I'm going to use the 8 Teresa Z, the Monmouth Oaks winner. She just barely almost broke 100, not yet. But referring back to this dot, for those that didn't listen earlier, this dot now it comes defaulted. This is our key race in customized PPs. You can also do angle with key races too, but in customized PPs, it's now set up to circle the like the square circle the key race. I changed mine to a fill because I wanted to see it, and I changed mine to tell me any race in which 2 or more horses have already won. And here you have a race, Teresa Z won, and Sine Wave is in this race, Overture. None of these are italicized. You see back here, you see the italics, so you know these horses won their next race. And you know Teresa Z won, and it was a 99. But I see this, and I say, well, okay, what am I missing? What do I like to know about this race? It gives me an edge on other people. Well, I know that 2 of these horses have already come back to win a race that was just run on August 12th. So already come back. If I want to see what they did, I can click on them. I can see out of the Teresa Z race here, you know 2 won an allowance race, went up from an 82 to a 96 Equibase speed figure, and Baby Blues Dancing won the Rolling Meadows Stakes at Arlington Park, a little slower, but won a stakes race. So already 2 horses have come back to win out of the Teresa Z race, and because this field is so tough, she's 12-1 on the morning line, again, with Castellano riding. And when you can't get 12-1 in Castellano most of the time in New York, so getting it in Philadelphia is certainly something you want to take advantage of. And the other, of course, is Salty, who ran very well, almost beat my top pick. It's as well for second in that race. Comes on late, she'll be kicked from the pieces. So it's as well as my top pick, Abel Tasman, going to use Teresa Z and Salty.
Nice addition of the $1 million Grade 1 Cotillion. I completely agree on the top pair. It as well was my play in the Alabama. Used the same approach I used in the Travers with Gunnevera. Wanted to have a price that you used with the logicals, and she did not disappoint. I thought she ran a tremendous race, and it was fairly obvious that she just, in the 1.25 miles, was not in her scope. And Drayden Van Dyke actually has a couple of mounts. He's riding for O'Neill. He's riding a horse I've liked actually since early in his career. That's the very late running Term of Art in the Derby, and he's also riding for Hollendorfer in the sprint as well. He's got Ike Walker, not in the sprint, in the Connect. But I think the top pair stand out, and Salty's got a running style that'll play well with Gaffleone at this racetrack. Let's turn, before we go to the Pennsylvania Derby, I want to give everybody the heads up on the new customer promotion, and you get 2 months free with a 1-month subscription. Use webinar as your promo code, and this is going to run out. We've been running this promotion all month. It's going to end at the end of the month, so you got 10 days, a little less here, 9 days to utilize it. It's basically 2/3 obviously off, and you can't beat the deal. New customers only, and use webinar when you check out for 3 months worth. That'll obviously take you right through November, Breeders' Cup, and much more into the great Thanksgiving holiday when you got so much good racing. So take advantage of this special if you're new to Stats Racelands. And I got to say, I've been seeing more and more players. We talked last month, Christian Helmers has had success, and he's been absolutely delighted with the things that he's discovering. Elliot Honecker, who is a tremendous contest player. Elliot talked about the 2 weekend scores that he had using it, and the more he's saying the same thing, the more he is playing with Stats Raceland, the more winners he's finding. So if you're considering it, here's a great chance to subscribe. Webinar at checkout for 2 months free with your month subscription. And again, the forum for advice and for interaction with other players, the newsletter that Ellis has talked about, and then you get the weekly emails and all the different tools at your disposal. And Stats Racelens on Twitter, you make sure to follow. Let's get into the Pennsylvania Derby. Dan, start us off.
Yeah, I like Timeline here. Timeline is a horse that I didn't love as the favorite in the Haskell, but I think we're going to get a good price on Timeline on Saturday, and I'm warming up to him a little bit, primarily because I went back and took another look at that Haskell, and Ellis can you see that arrow again, indicating trouble. And if you pull up the chart of this race, you can actually read the trouble, and then we're going to go ahead and look at some of that trouble. The trip was even worse than indicated there in that trouble in that indicator there. He was in tight along the rail, steadied entering the clubhouse turn, pushed his way between rivals to contest the pace, and we could play the early part of the race, and you could get a look at Timeline, who's going to be breaking from the 3-hole here. Oh, there we go. Pull up momentarily. So you'll see he doesn't get out quite as sharply as he had in his prior 3 races. Excuse me, this is going to be the 2. He'll be the 2, not the 3. And you'll see that Javier is going to try to settle him down, but he won't really oblige. So there you go. He breaks slowly, looking for some room up the rail. There he goes.
They really had to use the horse. I mean, he didn't cooperate, and then he sent him. So I guess.
Exactly. And here he is now. He's coming up. Yeah, so he's just not settling, and he wants to, you saw what Javier was trying to do. They were trying to rate him in, rate him behind the 2, but he wanted to go, and so he went, and the time was fast enough, 47-1, but again, contested, and after, working as hard as he had to get that position, I can forgive him for what happens next, which is that he more or less packs it in. Battle of Midway, by the way, was the 2-horse who went to the lead there, so sorry for the confusion there. I was describing it. The 3 was Timeline, and you can see he's under a ride already, and there's Irish War Cry going around him, and the rest of the field, McCracken as well, about to swallow him up. So, when I look at a race like that, I could say, let's set that one aside, and you go back before that, and this is a horse who posted 3 straight Equibase speed figures over 110, and you look at some of the horses that came out of even that Haskell and Battle of Midway, whom Timeline actually beat, came back and won next out, and not only did he win, he was dominant next out. You've also got Practical Joke with the circle there, the green circle, showing us that he came back to win a race with a higher class rating. That was, of course, the Jerkins at Saratoga. And so, a couple of horses that he wasn't, I guess Practical Joke did beat him by enough. But again, we're talking about 2 different things here in terms of, Timeline, what he experienced in that race, and Practical Joke, who actually drafted into a perfect trip, just didn't want to go that long. But, so, yeah, for those reasons, I like Timeline, and I do think that he wants to be on the lead. He draws the rail. He should be able to get to the front, and, despite the presence of Outplay, who could make life a little difficult for him, just right to his outside. But if he is able to get to the lead and settle down a bit, I think he'll be tough. West Coast, for people listening, just might think just on recent memory that maybe he needs to be on the lead, but he doesn't. He's 1 from off the pace, and I would think, given the way we've seen Timeline run, it would probably be in West Coast's best interest not to actually buy if Timeline is, decides to just kind of run off with it, and Javier decides to send him, as he probably will. So I think you're going to have West Coast sitting off. And I think Timeline will have an opportunity at least to redeem himself and show that he belongs in this company. I think he does. I'll take a shot with him. As I mentioned, West Coast, is the one, obviously to beat on paper. The stat that Ellis showed a little while ago, is, again, in stakes races here with Baffert, all that stuff could be applied here too, and kind of build the case for West Coast. With IRAP, another one that I kind of wanted to take a look at. This is a horse who's gotten no respect throughout. He wins the Bluegrass at 31-1, and is still kind of just one that no one really ever talks about. You don't have to watch the replay of the Travers, but he drew wide, was wide throughout, and he was brave to finish third. A mile and a quarter. I don't know if it was the distance or not, but he covered a lot of ground, and he didn't have it easy in that race. He certainly didn't have it as easy as West Coast did, and I thought he hung in and battled. So, give him another shot, give him another look with a better trip. He could be a presence, I think.
Ellis.
Well, Dan and I are completely off on this one because he thinks Outplay is going to get the lead, and I think Johnny V is going to take him back. You look at a horse here like Outplay, and it looks like he wants to lead. This race at Aqueduct where he sat, he really wanted all his wins here. Beautiful 105 back in April when he's just got to get mature, and then the MTO, and then coming back at Parks, which is great that he has a race over Parks where he goes wire to wire. Doesn't get the lead here, but that's one-turn race. The mile of 16 to Belmont. His two-turn races are these two wins here, particularly the last one, the Curlin. And, of course, the Curlin's got a special place in my heart, and I'm drawing a blank, I don't know, but the big Jerkins horse that won the Travers 3 years ago at $40 came out of the Curlin, which then there's Steve will pop in the head real quick here.
Firm Success or the other one?
VE Day, right?
Pardon?
Well, there was VE Day.
Yep.
VE Day, thank you. Yeah, VE Day. Yeah, VE Day came out of the Curlin to win. In any event, I don't think he needs to. And the reason I'll say that is this. So I have mine set of fractions to show the pace figure, the second call, which is in the route. It's going to be 6 furlongs. Of course, his final figures are in the 108, 108, 104 range, even back here. He doesn't run that fast early. He just happens, I'd like to say he just happened to have the lead because nobody wanted it in these races. Now, yes, he didn't win in the Belmont, but that's a one-turn. I'm looking at his two-turns. His two-turn races, he shows a kick here. And I guess I can look also because you can, even though I don't look at it much on the dirt, you can go to True Odds and look at late pace. And he's got the second best late pace rating in the field. Horses that run early on the lead do not have a high late pace rating. They can't because they're expending energy. And so I feel pretty confident. And if I'm wrong, I'll take my lumps. Everybody out there, and you guys can go ahead and give me some grief on Twitter. I'll take the good stuff. I'll take the bad. But in this particular case, I believe Outplay, and this is where Dan and I are going to disagree, is going to sit. No matter who goes, Outplay is going to sit off the pace, and that gives him a huge edge here because these consecutive great figures of 104, 108, 108, except for West Coast, he's the second best horse in the race, and it's not going to take a whole lot of improvement to run as well as West Coast here. And of course, you're looking at Outplay, Fletcher, Velasquez at 12-1. So he's my top pick. And then also, interesting because you usually don't get Fletcher at high odds here. I follow the circuit, of course I do, but I'm not familiar with what Fletcher does this. So I went and took Fletcher the last 2 years. The default was dirt routes, but now I'm going to change it to just at parks. So easily switch to today's track, and that's all I want to know. How does Fletcher do when he runs a horse at parks in dirt routes? Well, all of a sudden, this goes to a pretty good number. Now, the ROI is a little low, but if you look at this, it's 16 wins on 41. It's 40% wins and 66% in the money. And if I sort on the finishes, you can see they're mostly low odds. That's definitely something I'm concerned about with Outplay being high odds. But the fact is that Todd at Parks in dirt routes is 40% winners, and not on a small number, by the way. It's 41 starts on 31 horses here. So it's certainly very interesting. And one of them, as a matter of fact, because it's sorted on date here, I just was looking at the other day, was, and now, it was made from Lucky in the Greenwood Cup just 3 weeks ago. And he won by 12 with Javier. Of course, this time he's using Velasquez. So it's very interesting here. So I'm going to use outplay, and I hope that, in this race where the Polish just got 1 as opposed to the 3 in the other race, that they've got the right horse here. Can't knock West Coast a whole lot. Again, that Baffert stat that Dan referred to, 45% with back-to-back winners in a graded stakes. He won a graded stakes last time out. Certainly the 3 figures here, any of them win here if outplay doesn't freak. And he does project to be in front, which I thought was kind of interesting in the pace scenario, which is even better because it does put, well, actually watching Whiskey to be in front, but at the half mile, at the second call, West Coast is in front of both. This is Washington Whip being last in both calls. And so West Coast will be in front, and I believe outplay and Timeline will be sitting second and third. And Timeline, of course, doesn't like to sit. We'll see if he can or not. The horse I'm going to use also here in the exotics, and I like this race almost as much as the one 2 races back where I had that nice 12-to-1 shot, is I'm going to use here the 7 Game Over. And, I'm not going to talk about Trainer, except for the fact that we know he wins a high percentage of the races. But this is about the horse. He's won big in 3 of his last 4 races. He's the most lightly raced horse in the field with 4 career starts. His pattern is really good here after the race at Churchill in May, then the end of June against Arap and Gervin. He ran bad, 92, but he jumped up to a 107. This horse has a lot of upside still, in my opinion. He does. And his work since the race show he's holding condition, a minute flat, 59 flat. Very nice workouts. And then last of all, we have this angle again, the 3-5 furlong workouts within the last 7 days in a graded stakes. So this is different than the other one with the Hollendorfer. This is 3 in a graded stakes. And this has a decent size, and this is a profitable angle. So if a horse has a bullet workout in the last 5 furlongs in the last week in a graded stakes, they win 18%, they're in the money 50, and they show a positive ROI. And certainly, you're not going to have a positive ROI if you have a low win percentage, except for the fact that some of these horses pay a lot. And at 15-1, this could be one of those horses to add to it. So I definitely am going to consider Timeline and IRAP in my horses, in my exotics. Maybe talk Logistics and Irish Warcry. We haven't talked about him. I think if we don't talk about him, I'd be remiss here. So real quick, Irish Warcry opens 9-2. You know exactly what you do with a horse like this. He's just not the same horse as he was, back here in the wood. It's just the second in the Belmont was nice, but then this was really not, no excuse at all for having this great stalking trip and then quitting. So I might consider him. But I'm going to use outplay on top. My second pick is West Coast, and my third pick in the race is going to be Game Over for a nice price.
Well, you set off the alarms.
That's me in Brooklyn, by the way. In case, not anything I did, but that's my background noise. Just letting you know. No surprise.
I like it. Yeah. Well, you guys covered pretty much everything, and I'm hard pressed to argue with Baffert and West Coast, who has shown versatility and is obviously the hot hand. The horse that I'm emotionally attached to is Irish Warcry, who is doing something that any Thorograph user certainly will identify as as a alternating pattern. But he also may be maturing here as we get later in the season. One thing about this race, if you go through the last few years, just so people realize, last year Connect beats Gunrunner in a photograph, basically. The year before, Frosted beats Iron Fist by a couple of lengths. Bayern beat Capiture 3 years ago, and California Chrome didn't lift the hook, hated the going. It did not like this racetrack, and this is not a racetrack for everybody. Will Take Charge beat Moreno 4 years ago, and Handsome Mike, for those that may not recall, Leandro Mora was saddling at the time for Doug O'Neill, but O'Neill has won this race, beat Macho, and the year before, To Honor and Serve beat ruler on ice. And the theme there a little bit is late season horses have seemingly done well. The campaigners out of the spring have seemingly, kind of evaporated by this point on the calendar. Does that mean that Irish Warcry or even IRAP to some extent, they're not viable? No, because there's been enough decent performances from the early season horses to appreciate them. But I would give just a little bit of an edge to the horses like a West Coast, and I suppose, I don't like him, but Timeline or Outplay, they certainly are getting plenty of attention as we head towards Saturday. But from an emotional standpoint, Irish Warcry, the fact that he worked alone the other day, that's an interesting scenario, because Graham Motion has had to work him in company to motivate him, and it seems like he's gotten beyond that. And I think there's every likelihood that he runs an A race. And certainly this is a racetrack where if you're set up outside, for people that are worried about Abel Tasman being outside and are worried about Irish Warcry being somewhat outside, that's not a problem at Philadelphia. The inside generally is dead. This is the home of the perpetual dead rail, Philadelphia Park. So a very good edition of the first Grade 1 running of the Pennsylvania Derby. Before we run out of time, we might as well get the race at Charlestown in, and the Charlestown Oaks, kind of fun. And I know that both of you took a look at it. Ellis, what do you got?
Well, Dan and I tend to agree here, and I'll do most of the heavy lifting on this. Downtown Mama projected as the front runner at first and second calls, and I can't argue. This is a two-turn race, of course, at Charlestown, the 7 furlongs, and Downtown Mama's coming out of sprints, but I did want to show the pace projector and the fact that even though there's not very much difference in terms of probability here in the true odds scale, you've got Downtown Mama and Overture on both adjusted true odds, and true odds all about the same. Certainly could do it. There's still no rider named. Steve, if you know anything, let me know, but I'm sure it'll be named soon enough. But Downtown Mama, I'm sorry, there it is. John Velasquez's name now, so I'm not going to argue with that. Linda Rice, the last race, the Prioress, just got outbroke, but if she doesn't get outbroke here from the outside, gets the lead, this race here is very, very interesting to me. The 98 is the second best figure in the race. It's right behind Money Spunt and Shimmering Aspen. Money Spunt, the 8, has the best last figure in the field, would be the best beneficiary of a hot pace if someone takes on Downtown Mama early, which could happen with a Stroll in the Park, Overture, and our Angel Caitlin in the race. The last effort was 2 turns, so she got the distance, but she has the 2-turn experience, even though technically it's a 7 furlong, so that's great. This is another mount for Van Dyke, and certainly a shot. And then the AE Shimmering Aspen, I hope, gets in because I like this pattern. There's 2 7 furlongs, a nice improvement in the late summer here from 96 to 101, 2 dominating wins. Rodney Jenkins, interestingly enough, I have to show this, of the trainers in the field, and this is one of the things I did the past 2 years dirt sprints, and I'm going to look at Charlestown for Rodney. I looked at all trainers first, and he changed it to today's track, and because a lot of horses are shipping in here, so I wanted to see what this was. And I'm going to go to the all as soon as it shifts to him, so we look at them all. Go to show all, and you see a lot of zeros here. And then all of a sudden, if you go and sort on wins or on starts, you get Rodney Jenkins, 6 horses, 12 starts, 5 wins, 10 of the money out of 12 at Charlestown in dirt sprints, where everybody else has not a single win. Most of them haven't started a horse. And since this is a unique track, being the 7 furlong track and 2 turns at this distance, that's kind of an edge. So I like Shimmering Aspen if he gets in. And then Sine Wave, who's cross-centered in the Cotillion, has to be used if she goes in this easier spot, because we talked about Teresa Z. That was a key race again. For those who don't know, that's what this blue meant. That's now included in Raceland, and Babe Blue Dancing, and 2 have already come back to win. So my picture: Downtown Maria, Money Spunt, Shimmering Aspen, and Sine Wave. And off to you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm with you on Downtown Mama. I actually like the fact I did pick up on the Johnny V taking them out. I mean, going to Charlestown, for this race, and then it made me kind of wonder. I'm like, Johnny V and Linda. I can't recall that combo too often in graded stakes, so I actually did the search here using stats, and I looked up Johnny up for Linda in graded stakes over the past 5 years. You guys want to take a guess at how many times he's been up for her in graded stakes? We'll find out here in a second, but the fact that he's on this horse, I consider a good sign.
And doing the Parks to Charlestown commute.
Exactly. It's going to be a long day for him, so he must have been reassured. So this was a drive worth taking.
About a zero.
Yep, 0 time.
Yeah, big fat goose egg. Wow.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And these connections here, too. I mean, you got Lady Sheila Racing Stable, Sheila Rosenblum, and Linda Rice. As you mentioned, Matt King Cole, second in the Charlestown Classic, lost by a neck. And then you had Hot City Girl winning the Charlestown Oaks. So, you've got, a little recent history with Lady Sheila, Linda Rice at Charlestown. So I think all those signs are very good signs, and I think, you could look it up here again using today's track. Now, are you still searching with Johnny here, or is this a general? Yeah, so this is using today's track, past 2 years, Linda Rice. If you go put past 5 years, I think that's the only other race is going to be the Hot City Girl race, the Charlestown Oaks. So look, the few times that they've been here, they've run well. So they've had obviously legitimate contenders. One won and finished second by a neck in the other. And then also again drawing. Whenever I'm handicapping Charlestown, I'm looking for quality speed that can get to the lead. I think that's what we've got here. And, she's going to be sent clearly from the 10 post. And I think she'll be on the lead. And I think she'll be pretty tough to catch. If I were to give you a little bit of a long shot, it would be the 2-horse, a Stroll in the Park. Or we're looking at the, there you go. Sorry for making you bounce around, Ellis.
No, I wanted to show everybody again why we thought we both agreed she'd be on the lead all by herself.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to show it?
No, it's okay. Go back to the Stroll in the Park.
Okay. Yeah, Stroll in the Park. You can see earlier in the year she was campaigned. I think pretty hard and heavy. Had 6 races under her belt by mid-June. She was in form earlier, but declined a bit over her last few races. She was also in against Tougher in a few of those. If you can excuse her last race on account of fatigue and not taking to an off track, and you can forgive the race 2 back because she didn't break well and was never really in it, you can look at the race in April where you see that green circle around the 104. You might say, Mahoning Valley, not who was she up against? I could tell you the horse that she beat there in second, Crab Cakes, is a really nice Maryland bred who's come back a stakes winner. So that's a positive. She's fresh here. I think she has the ability to stay close to the pace. And like I said, if you can be on or near the lead at Charlestown, I'm generally going to give you a second look. And so I think this one is one who's a candidate to bounce back off a little bit of a break. And then the last one I'd include is Tequilita. This is one who's broken my heart a few times since that win in the Forward Gal in February. The last 3 have been disappointing to a certain extent. But again, this is another one who I don't know wanted to go long and then cutting back to 7 furlongs. Last out. We saw some improvement there in the test. We saw a lot of improvement actually. She's the only Grade 2 winner in the field, and the downside to her is that her only win was when closing into a very fast pace and even there she wandered a bit late. So I think she'll need to stay within range here. She'll have to stay a little closer to the pace, and she'll need the pace to be, somewhat strong and honest. And I don't know if she's going to get that for sure. But you got to use her, I think, based on class and some of the companies she's run with. So Tecalita, I would say use, but also play against in that top spot.
Well, Charlestown Oaks, late night action, 10, I think usually about 10:15, 10:20 for it to go off, plenty of time. And there's quite a few of the guys from Philadelphia that are going over, Castellanos, Carmouche, Saez, Johnny, even Drayden Van Dyke going over the ride as well. So big day, long day for the big name jocks, and the Grade 3 Charlestown Oaks capped really a terrific day in the Mid-Atlantic region. And that caps our conversation tonight for Stats Racelands. And we're glad everybody could join us. A reminder, webinar, your checkout code if you are going to join and utilize Stats Raceland, the subscription for the first time, and 2 months free with your 1 month purchase. Follow Stats Raceland and follow Anonymous Man and follow Uber Capper on Twitter. And we'll wish everybody the best of luck. If you're going to be in Philadelphia, we'll see you there. Looking forward. It seems like everybody's coming down, and should be a wonderful day at Parks. Weather is going to be exceptional. Mid-80s and absolutely perfect there in Ben Salem. So look forward to seeing everybody and wish everybody the best of luck. Ellis, thanks. Good luck. Dan, maybe see you down there.
Thank you, Steve. I don't think I'll be making it down this weekend, but enjoy yourself out there. And Ellis, let's try to hit another $4,000 winner this weekend, all right?
Yeah, thank you. And remind everybody that we'll be doing this again in 2 weeks for the big weekend, the Belmont Super Saturday and Keeneland Fall Stars weekend. Lafitte Pinkai Jr., the third, and me, and, of course, Steve. And really looking forward to setting up a big weekend.
Should be tremendous. And, of course, Antonita will be in full swing. We'll probably slip in a couple of great race place ideas as well. Everybody have a great weekend. Should be tremendous. Best of luck. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.